everyone, this is Courtney
and Brandon
from Ruby Red Farm. Today we're going to take you on a nice comprehensive tour of our 10-acre homestead.
Let's come check it out.
So we purchased this property 7 years ago, and it was originally built all the way back in 1830, so our home is very quickly approaching its 200-year birthday.
This property is 10 acres. It's mostly out in grass hay. It's a giant square essentially with a house smack dab in the middle of it. The barns, there's two barns. One is probably around a 1900-ish build, and then the other one, our shop, was built here within the last couple years.
We mow about 1.5 acres of this property just to keep some yard. We'll take you through though, guys, and we'll show you all the different animal operations that we're running right now, talk through the different areas of our farm, as well as a few plans that we have for the future. We are situated on a major road, which provides a lot of opportunity for us when it comes to sales, because that way we have traffic pretty consistently. However, our house is about 200 feet off the property line, and so we get that peace and quiet that we wanted from the country while still having a relatively busy road front. All right, first stop, this area over here is where we tend to rotate our meat chickens. These meat birds, we have 80 in this coop right now. We move them every day, so they are due for a move. I'll go ahead and do that now. We typically do run the meat chickens right through this area here because it's closest to the house. We do that for predator purposes, but we also do it because it's closer to the water. Meat birds use as much water as they do food. So we like to keep a close eye on them. And again, we keep them right up by the house here. I'm gonna go ahead and move them to fresh grass for today. We are hoping and planning on getting a lot more meat chickens in the future years. This year we're raising about 600 meat birds total. And that's just enough to really only have the one coop like this at a time. We stack them about every 5 weeks. So these guys actually only have about a week left, and then we have a batch in the garage ready to go to replace them. All in all, really like this spot for our meat chickens. I'm sure we will move them around in the years to come. All right, moving on to the laying hens. All right, so out here in our north pasture right now is where we have our laying hens. So in general, we try to run this north pasture with our laying hens in the summer because of the water issue again. And then in the winter, we switch them either to the garden or to the south pasture because they don't consume nearly as much water in the winter. I'll show you our laying hen setup though. We do use Electronet from Premier One fencing. We do not typically electrify it because we don't usually need to mess with that. We can if we need to. We do have the chargers for it. But the way we do our chickens is we rotate them roughly every 2 weeks to a new spot. What that does is that really concentrates the manure to the one area. They tend to come towards the house more than anything. And so if we kept them in a large area, they really would probably only use a small portion of it. If there are high weedy areas like the one you see right there, if there's areas like that, sometimes we'll come in afterwards and mow it just to make sure those weed seeds don't take hold quite as much. But as you can see, this section of our field is probably a good 3 acres by itself. And we started them way up there by the road early this spring. And we have just slowly but surely moved them through. The grass through here has already recovered really well. And then you can see over here where they just were. And again, how quickly that grass bounces back. They had probably this area where you see our cat right over there. They were here about 6 weeks ago. They were there about 4 weeks ago, and then they spent the last 2 weeks up on the hill. This is an area now that they've only been in for about a week, and they have already really done a great job of eating quite a bit of that grass and tromping it down, which is what we want. So they make very good foragers. Our laying hens are pasture raised. They do get supplemental feed in these great big trash cans. We, of course, though, are having to haul water out. We do not have the blessing of having multiple wells on our property. We only have the one, and so we are pumping water out to all these animals, but it's not too bad normally. The original coop on the left here was one that we built about 2 years ago. It was the first time we really went all in and bought maybe 100 chicks at once. The new coop off to the right here was one we built this past winter. We got some good videos on that. Still working on part 3 because we've still not painted the thing. But right now we have about 300 laying hens, all different breeds, simply because I like a good variety. I think they all have something to bring to the table. And while we, yes, are trying for production, we're also trying for flock health. And so I think the variety and the diversity actually does a lot to help that. We actually kept 2 roosters this time. It was the first time we'd ever kept a rooster. So we kept 2 roosters, and they do a good job of protecting the flock, and they aren't too rough on our hens, so that's nice. A lot of those production breeds, we do have white eggs and brown eggs, and we keep them on the move. They're pretty used to the pasture life. So as you leave our laying hen area, you come back to the original barn. Like he said, this was about 1900 or so. Real nice barn that's had quite a few additions put on, like most barns have. So it's got a corn crib added on here and then a big lean-to on the back. I'm coming this direction right into the sun though, so that you can see this area back here is where we keep our pigs. So we simply use the 2 strands of wire. You can probably see it a little better over there. So we have the 2 strands of wire that run across all the way around here. So that wire eventually hooks up all the way over there to that charger. This pig area out here, the pigs were just here up until about a week ago. At that point a week ago, we decided then to rotate them back to the other pasture that had a little bit of a chance to recover. We have 2 paddocks right now, and that's essentially how we run it. So our piggies right now are hanging out in their newer pasture, and hopefully it will stay put. Oh, it's totally gonna break through. Hanging out over there, letting this grass have a break. They did a great job eating all the weeds, and then they will hopefully do the same to that pasture over there. So they're very excited to see me. So there's our piggies. I'll show you from the other side too. Again, here's our old barn. Love this building. We're working on building a new brooder in here. And so we're hoping that brooder will be where we start raising all of our chicks. This here is what we call our teenager coop. So this is where we put any birds that are kind of in that awkward teenager stage that we just don't quite have a spot for. We moved these turkeys out here just last week. They have already eaten all the grass, which is kind of impressive. We've got about 20 to 25 turkeys this year that are just raised for meat. The idea is that they stay in this coop just for a week or 2 to kind of get used to being outside, and then we'll move them to their more permanent home out in the field, near where the laying hens are, but still separated. We do have 1 beehive. They're pretty quiet today. It's been a lot cooler for August. So you see a few hanging out outside of it. We traded half a hog for that beehive. I'm very proud of myself for that. So back here is the back side of our barn. We have got, again, piggies. So this is the other side where you'll see them coming over. This is the area that they're in right now. Give them a treat real quick.
You guys need a treat?
That ought to keep them happy for a while. This pasture here, we do have what I lovingly call their living room. We have the area that they can go into at any time. It's got a nice water hole on the other side that they can cool off in. And then they can get inside pretty much at any given time to get out of the weather if they need to. Honestly, they love when it rains though. One of our goals eventually is to run some rotating paddocks back towards the fence row here. That we do have a little bit of a tree line that gets somewhat significant there in the middle. And I would love to get them under some trees, eating a little more of a pig's true diet. So right now though, they are pasture pigs, and so far they don't seem to mind. Here's the tractor. It's a John Deere 2010 that has no brakes and sometimes works. This is the inside of our barn. He's built us this really nice system here that this section to the left can close, and we can put new piglets. Every now and then we'll get 2 separate batches of pigs, and so it's nice to be able to have the piglets separate from the big pigs. Normally we get them all at once though. This bay here is more for parking, but we could put a gate on it if we needed to in the future. And then we have their indoor living room back here where we have the different waters, and again where they can get out of the weather. We typically only raise pigs in good weather, which here in Indiana really means more like March through October or so. All right, coming out then into the garden. My garden is a disaster because it is August. So tons of weeds. We do try to keep the whole living pathways thing, but we took it a little too literally this year. So we have, I would say, about a ½ acre in garden. I plant typically 30 to 40 foot rows of things. Some green beans going here, some different zucchini plants, tomatoes. Hard to see because it is such a mess right now. We typically let nature do the watering, and if need to, we will intervene and water a little bit. But for the most part, we kind of just let this thing be. And we have been very blessed with fertile soil out here, and we just reap the benefits, which I know, don't hate on us too much. Tomato plants really just did not do well this year. It rained way too much. So this was the back portion. We had the front portion here. Got a lot of radishes going. This is my cool weather crops. Have a bit of a microclimate because of that tree that unfortunately died last year. We still like it though, because it provides, as you see right now, a lot of evening shade, which gets that temperature down for these cooler weather crops. We have a little bit of trellising for some different things. Every year though, we try to kind of revamp this garden, lots of crop rotation, and really just making the most of it. Out here is our orchard. We did unfortunately lose a tree over here this year. We have about 12 fruit trees out here, I would say, especially if we turn around and look back this way. We have primarily apple trees with a handful of peach trees thrown in here, hoping to really foster that and get those growing a lot better in the next couple years. One thing I wanted to point out, and I apologize for the sun, it's a shame it's so gorgeous tonight. So here in the next year or so, we actually are really hoping to totally revamp what this western pasture looks like. We're hoping to fence the north pasture, both for animal security and so that we may be able to potentially get some sheep in the future. We would get some meat breeds of sheep to raise for lamb meat. We also, though, at this western side, I mentioned with the pigs, we want to run them more back to the west to that fence row. We really want to try to incorporate, though, more of a true market garden that you would traditionally see in a no-till type of an environment, where maybe we do a low till and then treat more with compost and natural ways to disrupt the soil a lot less. We are really researching hard this year about improving our practices, particularly when it comes to gardening. And so one of the ways we want to do that is to move the garden from what really is our yard. We may keep some of that space garden, but it would be more for us. But for our more mass-produced kinds of things that we sell at the market and potentially to restaurants, we want to use this space here. It also has really nice afternoon and evening shade, which really does come in handy in the heat of the summer. We're looking to potentially get a high tunnel as well. And we would probably use some different low tunnels, if you will, like caterpillars and other row covers along those lines. We're trying, though, to find a way to grow food at least 10 months out of the year. That's kind of our goal. And so this whole western pasture is a big part of that plan. All right, back to the tour. That disaster right in front of me here is our pumpkin patch. And I promise there's pumpkins in there somewhere. All right, it's our south pasture. We use it more just for rotating the chickens through in the wintertime. For the record, we do bale the hay. Our brother-in-law has the equipment and we help him out. We bale the hay. He uses it primarily for his cattle. And then we use it some for bedding, actually. So we use hay for bedding quite a bit around here for our chickens. See, look, I see one. I see some pumpkins. Told you there's pumpkins. All right, coming back up towards the house, guys. We have our greenhouse, which is a disaster because I forgot to water the plants for like 1 week and they all died. So I ripped them all out. So someday I will learn how to use our very nice greenhouse that he built me. He put in these slick windows so that they open. We got a whole video on this greenhouse. In general, we have 5 raised beds in there right now, hoping to get a 6th and hoping to do most of our seed starting in that building come next spring. Okay, over this way, we have our hot pepper garden. We do try to keep our hot peppers separate from our regular peppers. And so right over here is all of my hot peppers. They are coming in really nicely. And then trying to really put in a lot of nice sized trees so that we can get a wind block for our house and so that we can get some good shade for that backyard eventually. That tree up there will probably have to be taken out. So trying to replace it before we have to. This building here, obviously not the prettiest thing you've seen in your life, but this is our meat shack, as we call it. So this is our walk-in cooler. This building here has 10-foot ceilings and we have a CoolBot system inside of it that we can cool it down to refrigerator temperatures. He has hooked it up pretty sweetly here. He did a nice job really heavily insulating this, and then we've got 4 nice pulleys up at the top. And so we can do a lot of prep with our meats in this building. It's also a nice place to store produce if we absolutely have to, as just a nice overflow of refrigerated space. Our backyard holds our ferocious guard dogs back here. Are you ferocious? So they've got about 100 by 60 foot space back here. That is awesome because we've got kind of a Jack and Jill doggy door here. they can go into the garage and they sleep in there at night. Eventually though, we want to get Big Boy out with the sheep, have him live up to his true calling a little bit at least. This building here is our new shop that we actually had built. We had this built about 2 years ago now. This building is 44 by 24 by 16. We did have it built, which is a little hard to swallow because we typically do everything ourselves, but this was just way too big of a project for us. We had this put together. They came out and they had it done. You know how that goes in like 2 days. But we did run electricity out to it. It's essentially become our freezer space. So this is where we have all of our meat freezers, and then it's his workshop. He did put the ceilings though that high so that he can put a loft out here for the kiddos to hang out. So it's gonna end up being just a really nice asset to get some things out of the garage and to get some things out of the barn so that we can use those spaces a little more efficiently, make this more of a people building and have those be better used for how we serve our animals. We've got all our freezers, which become great tables. And then he is in the process of building us a really nice loft. He's putting all that together for kid hangout space, which is gonna be fabulous as they get older. Yeah, we keep all of our freezers out here. It's a good way for us to separate which electricity goes for the business and which electricity goes for us, because these freezers do pull quite a bit of electricity. So that is the shop. It's very exciting. Thank you, dear. All right, guys, that's a tour. I hope you enjoyed seeing our homestead and seeing how we make all of this work. We are a pretty small operation. We both work outside of the home, but we are really turning our attention towards making this into more of a business now. So with that in mind, if you really like to see how we change this from just a hobby into a business, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. If you really enjoy the chickens, we have a whole playlist just about our chickens, for example. Go check all of those out. For now though, this was Courtney
And Brandon.
from Ruby Red Farm, and I hope you all have a great night.